pro-Trump lawyer is now facing actually $1.3 billion kind of a defamation lawsuit by voting software company after her election challenge went bad. Okay, here's this lawyer who says she creates this movement in the United States, and the movement is there's been a big cover-up. But she goes after Dominion voting machines, okay? And Dominion says, okay, what are you talking about? There's been, what, six judges who have looked at it. She's filed these federal pleadings. 6 judges have looked at it and said, no, there's not a scintilla of information you're giving us to believe that there's some conspiratorial element with Dominion voting in their effort to change the election results.
You know, what has stood out to me the most about all these lawsuits is not only the fact that, one, you have Trump-appointed lawyers, or judges, excuse me, who've thrown the cases out because they have no merit, but 2, is that Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and these other, upfront lawyers refused to share all of the so-called evidence that they had with the actual Trump lawyers from the campaign. The Trump actual lawyers from the campaign went up to them and said, listen, you say you've got all this wonderful evidence and you're going to release it. Can you please share it with us so that we're all on the same page and we know what we're working with? We're his real lawyers. And every time they said, no, you can't have it. You can't. And yeah, right. We all know why.
It wasn't there. Okay, what I think back to this story early on. You had these lawyers that were standing behind her, this Sidney Powell, and, she's our leader. They started leaving the ship like rats on a sinking ship because they saw the same thing that Dominion sees, and that is, okay, look, you can file a lawsuit. Great. File the lawsuit if there's a scintilla of information that warrants discovery. You can go for it, take depositions. You can do all that. But they have done more than that. You see, this lawsuit doesn't protect them. They don't have a protection to say, well, we have the right to bring a lawsuit. The defamation case is more focused on what they did outside of the courtroom, right. What they said outside the courtroom, the way that they characterized Dominion voting company as being just being a thug.
Right, saying they were in bed with Venezuela and Hugo Chavez, and that somehow Dominion bribed Republican officials in Georgia to look the other way when their algorithm switched votes from Trump to Biden. I mean, this is, to call it anything less than a conspiracy theory, just wouldn't be accurate at this point. That is what Sidney Powell was claiming publicly. Not necessarily in the lawsuits, because again, if she claims it in the lawsuit, well, Dominion, you really can't do much about that. She's alleging it, you defend it, whatever. But saying it in public, giving these press conferences, along with the media that amplified her, and the media, for the record, to their credit, they got their cease and desist, and they ceased and desisted. Well, they came out and issued a retraction, said, listen, we're sorry, we didn't mean it, there's no evidence.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
And Fox comes out. There's several of them.
The One America News,
yeah,
Newsmax.
Did Rudy Giuliani come out and say this?
He has not yet, so he could still be in trouble.
Okay, so the Epoch Times,
yeah,
and so at least they had enough sense to say, this woman is a little squirrely, and so here's what really gets interesting. She may be sitting there thinking, I'm protected. I got a First Amendment right to say what I say, and maybe she's going to be protected under New York Times versus Sullivan. Maybe she's going to have some protection there. But the real point comes in where she's not really protected outside of the courtroom when she says things that there's no basis for. I mean, this company said that they've paid more than $500,000 for security for their employees who have been threatened.
That's another part of the story that's been overlooked by so many, is the fact that her words and her actions are causing these regular everyday employees of Dominion to receive death threats. They're terrified for the safety of their family, especially after what we saw happen in the Capitol last week. They know these people aren't joking around anymore. These are very serious threats to them. So yes, because of what Sidney Powell has said and done, Dominion is upping security for their staffers and trying to keep them from being killed just because they work for Dominion. And so, look, we've been talking for decades about voting machines and the problem with voting machines. So let's be honest. We've known there are problems with these systems. Absolutely no question about it. That needs to be addressed and it needs to be investigated. Maybe we can build a consensus now that Republicans are mad too.
This might be the time to do it.
But what she's been saying about Dominion, you could have had some goodwill if you hadn't gone crazy on it.
Yeah, and she went crazy. Farron, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.